PBS, NPR, and ABC News Nightline. Anissa is an alumna of Wellesley College and the Columbia University Graduate School of Journalism. She was a 2009-2010 Fulbright Scholar in Jordan. Please help me in welcoming Anissa Mehdi.
Thank you so much, Kanis Sivji, for that beautiful introduction. And I want to express gratitude also to Talib Kizlivash for inviting me to be this year's speaker, and to Hasnain Sajan, who is providing valuable technical support. It's been a real pleasure and an honor for me to be with you these evenings, and I really appreciate the opportunity to engage. I also want to thank Kazem for centering us by sharing a reflection on this special night and reminding us of the tragedy of Imam Ali alayhi salam and the opportunity that he leaves for us with his leadership and his words of mercy and compassion and faith. And then I want to say to you out there in YouTube land, thank you for joining us on this last hour or so before iftar on the final day of our Oil Ramadan lecture series together. And I do hope that it may be as rewarding for you as this has been for me. Last night, we looked into the narrative of Ibrahim and his family. May God be pleased with all of them. We looked at trials and tests and choices, long distance walking, northward between the two rivers, the Tigris and the Euphrates, across part of lower Turkey, what is now Turkey. They called it, I think, Asia Minor. Southward through the Jordan River Valley, then west across Sinai, east again, back across Sinai, south to Mecca, and then north again, back to Canaan, where Ibrahim's sons buried their father together as a show of perennial fraternal love, reconciliation, and an example to us, their spiritual descendants, to do the same. This is not a story of ancient enemies. This is a story of a reconciled family that we have an opportunity in our daily lives to re-reconcile, right? It's what we do with the story, and we want to re-reconcile. During Ramadan, fasting brings all of this into focus, things that I may not notice or think about during the rest of the year. What's that like for you? I wish we could have an interaction at this moment and I could hear back from you. This year, I find I don't miss food that much. I miss sleeping. Ramadan during late spring and summer is tough because in the northern hemisphere, we're all living very long days, right? Suhoor is early, iftar is late. And I find I don't want to eat a lot of dinner because then I'm not hungry for breakfast, and I eat because I know I should, and because food is a blessing beyond blessings. I need to be grateful for it. Water too, clean water. I think of the people on our planet that don't have access to potable water, yet they too, during Ramadan, are grateful for the blessings that God provides. So gratitude is huge during this month, isn't it? Another realization I have practically every Ramadan is the one about anger, short-temperedness, and irritability. Computer and tech issues, Zoom isn't working. I can't get onto Facebook because Google Authenticator wasn't transferred from my old phone to my new one. I'm trying to search for data links, everything else. During Ramadan, I don't let myself be bothered by that. I'm not distracted by those distractions. Are you cranky when you're hungry? And we're not supposed to be rude during Ramadan? Irritated by something your kids did, or your neighbor, or Putin, or the Taliban? Well, we express ourselves differently during Ramadan, don't we? And I wonder why we reserve this 100% respectful engagement with others for Ramadan. What about the rest of the year? My kids always look forward to Ramadan because they know mom's not going to get angry with them for anything. We hold our temper during Ramadan. Why not the rest of the year? Ramadan is requiring behaviors like ihram, which we a behavior we attire ourselves with during the Hajj pilgrimage, where we are, again, at our best, and we're not irritable, and we don't complain. And although in the Hajj, of course, men in particular are dressed differently. But these behaviors, I keep asking myself every year, why not the rest of the year? Now, on a long distance walk, complaining about being tired doesn't shorten the journey. Assisting your fellow walker, however, does shorten the journey. On a long distance walk, pushing your own pain, pushing through your own pain is good training for being back at your desk with a difficult employee, or maybe your in-laws. I'm lucky, I love my in-laws. It's a test of endurance, commitment, physical and spiritual strength that should not only be, I shouldn't say should, but doesn't have to only be during the month of Ramadan and while you're at the Hajj. So with that, I encourage you and I encourage myself to embrace this test, even beyond this holy month. Now, Kenise shared some questions from yesterday with me, and I'd like to answer them now. There were some great questions, and thank you so much, whoever those of you are that put these questions forward. One is, in the clip of Stoning the Devil, the pilgrim Abdul spoke. And the question is, did he also speak about feelings of unity and connecting with strangers? And what were my experiences, the question is, on my journeys of the Hajj? Well, I will say in general, people do experience a feeling of unity with others. And you'll see in a moment that Abdul Mubarak speaks specifically about that when he's meeting people at Arafat. Other Hajis that I met felt like they were corralled into their own tour group, their own Hajj travel group, their own national group, limiting their exposure to people from elsewhere. You know, they get to know one another. I made you into nations and tribes so you could know one another. Well, we're being corralled here at Hajj. So one of the pilgrims I featured during my National Geographic film Inside Mecca felt excluded from his own group. Another had her identity challenged. Are you really a Muslim? So I'm going to show you a composite clip that starts at the tent city of Mina, where the Jamrat takes place, you'll remember from yesterday. And you'll see the logistical solution that the Saudi government put in place just to make sure everyone had a place to sleep at night at Mina. The pilgrims are organized by nationality, a solution that paradoxically limits our access to one another. So this short clip will give you a sense of some of these pilgrims and their experience in answer to that question at the Hajj. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim.
This is a town that grows.
So sorry. Try that again.
Grows from virtually 0 to 2 million people overnight. A few pilgrims still set up camp here as their ancestors did. But for some, the challenge isn't setting up camp, it's finding it.
I'm going to check where are my groups. I think it's, if I'm not mistaken, tent number 3A.
In an attempt to organize chaos, Mina is arranged by national groups. But even with a color-coded map, it can be hard to find your place.
Yes, I think we are looking for our camp.
Which camp is it? No, we, Alaman, I'm not sure. What group you want?
Alaman.
All South Africans join us.
Is it?
So no, exactly we find it.
Well, this is South African from there up to the end. So, we don't have to go. Oh, there's Dawood.
Khalil.
Now, just for a moment to let you know, that was filmed in 2003. That sign may look very differently now, telling pilgrims where to go, but there's still that kind of organizational construct there. There has to be some way to organize people.
This is a town that grows from virtually 0 to 2 million people overnight. A few pilgrims still set up camp here as their ancestors did. But for some, the challenge isn't setting up camp.
Whoops.
It's
Sorry about that too. Let me get us organized here again. Technical difficulties. Not getting upset. Pull us forward. So this is the second part of Khalil's experience that we're going to see now. Here we go.
Khalil too has had his patience tested.
Khalil.
Yeah.
I think he's walking, Raj.
Yeah, he's gone.
He's gone. He's gone.
He's already left.
It seemed to Khalil he wasn't being treated the same as other South African pilgrims because he's black. It's not at all what he expected on the Hajj.
It is very painful to see this condition happening during the Hajj, since we are here always in one community, not looking to the color and not looking to the race, or whether you are rich or you are poor. When we are here, indeed, we need to respect the human being.
Khalil is shaken. His vision of brotherhood seems under siege. Yet he's in a state of ritual sanctity. If he loses his temper, he will violate Ihram. So Khalil moves on. He joins up with another group from Malawi.
And we're just moving on to
Ever
the
since
next.
she landed in Arabia a week ago, Fidelma's been on the run. Today she's taking it easy, in the tradition of the Prophet, pausing before tomorrow's trial of the soul begins.
It's not a vacation because there are stresses and the time schedule is totally topsy-turvy and everybody's off their sleep pattern. I don't know anybody that's had a good night's sleep for 7 or 8 days.
Tall, fair Fidelma catches the eye of many people here. Yet, it isn't the gawking that puts her off. A beautiful woman may also be noticed in Texas. But comments are harder to ignore.
I had some women in my group and some women who are strangers to me try to tell me what it's like to be a Muslim and ask me, are you really Muslim? I think they forgot for a moment that you can only be here if you're Muslim. It gets a little bit tiresome day after day. It can be upsetting.
Still, since she's in a state of ritual sanctity, she must be patient and persevere.
So they had problems, but these become resolved.
The mood is subdued at Arafat.
This is from 2000.
For the first time in
This is from
days.
1998.
Muslim legend has it Adam and Eve met here after they were expelled from Eden. The Prophet Muhammad gave his final sermon on the Mount of Mercy at Arafat. It is said that here, God answers all prayers. Being at Arafat gives Muslims a chance to meet one another. After all, there are people here from every nook and cranny on the earth. This togetherness brings unity to the world's largest gathering of diverse peoples.
Morocco. Oh, Morocco? Yeah, Morocco. Morocco, yeah. That's how they say it. Morocco, yeah. Oh, Morocco.
When we talked amongst ourselves, we talked as human beings. We didn't talk as a Pakistani did to an American or a European talking to an American. We talked as Muslims, as human beings to one another. The issue of race, the issue of ethnicity, the issue of nationalism was non-existent.
Though sorely tested, Khalil's ideals remained intact, bolstered by his time at the Kaaba, where he witnessed a kind of Islamic brotherhood.
People, different colors, women, men, children, being together with love. I said, God, great. You are so great. I thank you to bring me this place, to see the place where all this event happened. Here I am. Indeed, I thank you, God.
A very happy moment for me was on this large African man, helped me find a space, and then he looked at me and said, "American?" And I said, "Yes." He said, "You Muslim?" I said, "Yes." And he said, "Alhamdulillah, praise be to God." And I really felt welcome.
All right. So I hope that gave you a sense of some of the trials, and then again, some of the reconciliation, the internal reconciliation, the solutions that our pilgrims experienced while they were at the Hajj. And you can't have the reconciliation and the resolution without the problem to start. So they weren't looking for problems, but these problems presented themselves, and they grappled with them with dignity and with patience. And in the end, each of them was able to have a beautiful experience while they were in this pilgrimage. And I encourage you all, you can see most of this, the whole documentary of Inside Mecca. People have put it up on YouTube. You can watch it there. You can watch portions of Sacred Journeys on the air, but PBS has not put the whole thing up free yet. So you can also buy the 6-hour series. And the story about Abdul Alim Mubarak, I produced in 3 parts. It's a 3-part series for Religion and Ethics News Weekly, which you can find on my website, anisamehdi.com, or on my YouTube channel, which is Whetstone Productions. But if you go to anisamehdi.com, click YouTube, you'll find the 3-part series on Abdul. Is called An American Pilgrim. And he and I are still quite good friends. I was talking to him yesterday. He knows that you're learning about him. So then another question from yesterday. You've alluded to a lot of fascinating stories of Abraham along this great path. Can you talk a bit more about your favorite stories that showcase hospitality or connection with others and strangers? Well, I'll tell you one. In 2009, it was Halloween, and I was in Jordan with as a Fulbright scholar, and I had a lot of friends who were the younger college graduates, and they were Fulbright fellows. And so I invited all of them. There were 19 of us all told. I said, let's go walk in the hillsides of Ajloun, Jordan. Beautiful, during this beautiful fall day, among the olive farms and the pomegranate farms. And we went and had a guide and walking from town to town, and it was a glorious walk. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, the sky opened and there was this huge storm of rain. And there was just a big tree nearby, and we all huddled under this tree to keep ourselves dry. And in a moment, in just a moment, I felt somebody tapping on the back of my shoulder, and I saw a woman there, and she was holding her scarf over her head like this. And she's saying, Ta'al, come with me, come with me. And I asked her, all of us, kulna? And she said, yes, all, kulu. And she pulled us into her very small home that happened to be right next to this tree. And we all took off our shoes and left them outside and sat down. There were cushions around the edges of this main room in the house. And within moments, her 8-year-old daughter was bringing around little cups of sweet tea. And they were followed by the 5-year-old who was carrying cookies. And then last round was some Turkish coffee. And by the time we were done, she was done being hospitable with us, and we were chatting with her. And the hospitality was so refreshing. The rain was gone. And we thanked her, and I just didn't know, do I pay her? What do we do? And I asked my guide, what do we do? And he said, I'm going to talk to her about becoming a host on this path. And that will be a much more of a gift to her family, to be a longtime host and to entertain and take care of walkers than, one time you give her 5 dinars or something. So we thanked her and we left, and I saw him chatting with her later. Lo and behold, that was 2009. In 2014, I was back with a group of people from the Abraham Path Initiative, and we were walking that same path. And we stopped at her home for lunch. It had been planned, and she had a glorious meal laid out for us. And it all came from that spontaneous act of hospitality and kindness to strangers, which I'll never forget. The other thing I won't forget is that the Fulbright scholars, these wonderful, 25-year-olds, 20 to 25-year-olds, all said, I don't think I'd ever invite strangers into my house, let alone 19 of them. I'll never have enough cups. But I wonder about that now, if maybe they found enough cups at this point in their lives, and they recognize the value of an opportunity like that. Another question. You mentioned the idea of neuroscience and walking and how our minds react to walking. You even interviewed the professor of neuroscience on her pilgrimage, and that was Fidelma, who we saw, who was questioned because she's blonde. She's a very fair woman. Are you really Muslim? Says, can you explore more of that for us? And what do you feel are the psychological, but also physiological changes in a person after they walk on the path? Well, after a good long walk, really anywhere, but it's especially lovely in a new place and a new environment and new landscape. After a good long walk, you know what you're made of. You know that you can do almost anything. Your body is stronger than before. Your lungs are breathing better. Your capacity is increased in your lungs. And the pain in your quadriceps is eventually traded out for muscle. And everyone that I've walked with has had a similar experience to that. Our Jordanian trekking guide in March, this past March, Mahdi Hanini, makes 3 important points about walking. He says, it's good for your body. You can meditate, reflect, pray, and be grateful as you walk. And you learn. He says, you learn from the people you meet along the way. You learn from what you see along the way. You learn from your body. And you learn from the meditations that you undertake. And he also said something that affected me profoundly. He said that the Abraham Path, the project that has created these walking trails, may be one of the only useful results of 9/11. That's a big thing to say. Now, parenthetically, in my world of journalism, another useful result of 9/11, as I noted on Wednesday, is that many North American Muslim college students began to consider journalism as a profession. They knew they needed to be part of the conversation on how these stories are told. And so they're participating now and figuring out with others how to cover these stories, why and when and who to interview. But back to the story of walking. Regarding the impact of walking on your physiology and your brain, I'd like to recommend that you watch one of our episodes of Meet Us on the Abraham Path. This is API's monthly webinar series. And there's an episode called The Power of Walking. It was done in June of 2021, so nearly a year ago. But you can go to our YouTube channel, Abraham Path Initiative YouTube channel, and just click on The Power of Walking. It's just under an hour, and you'll learn an awful lot from our guest, David Baum, about the psychological, the physiological impacts of walking. And you can also learn about how to use walking in your own life and your own world to improve yourself the way exercise does. How does one join one of these groups that are organized by API and have trips resumed since COVID? Well, the Abraham Path Initiative is not a tour operator. At the same time, we'll be very glad to connect you with tour operators and guides in the region, and I will be very glad to help you design the path that you want to take, to design the journey that will satisfy you or bring you the adventure you're looking for. So please be in touch with me. You can reach me at Anisa, ANISA, at abrahampath.org. Sometimes we do offer Abraham Path experiences, which are curated and themed walks, such as a program on negotiation as you walk, a program on food, or a focus on local music. And I'm particularly interested in a walk that goes from mosaic site to mosaic site, because the mosaics that date back to the Greeks and the Romans and the Byzantines are exquisite, and some of them are are among the best mosaics you'll find in the world. So we do those occasionally, but we're only revving up again now that COVID appears to be coming to a close, at least in terms of how much it impacts our daily lives. So these will be posted on our website. Check in from time to time at abrahampath.org. And now let me go back to my screen, my share screen. And those were the questions. I want to thank the askers again for those wonderful questions. Let's see, here we go. Okay, so we shared this quote last time too. Love this Bukhari, and I want to thank Talib for bringing this one to my attention. Be in this world as though you were a stranger or a wayfarer. It just opens up the possibility for you to be, to experience, to receive, to breathe in the surprises of life, the advantages of not having everything planned and prepared and mapped out and scheduled, which is so much a part of our daily lives. And I find that during Ramadan, my daily schedule isn't the same, and that it is freeing indeed. So I want to give you a few other quotes about traveling. I was inspired by Bukhari. Tennessee Williams, the American playwright, says, "Make voyages, attempt them. There's nothing else." And Joseph Campbell, I read from him to you on Wednesday, but it's worth reading again. Says, "What might make the world a better place? Tourism. Go out and meet someone new. Learn a new language, another mythology, another religion." He's not saying go believe the other religion. He's saying learn about another religion. And our prophet has told us we must learn, even if it takes us all the way to China, which was about as far as imagination could go at that time, right? But it means to the ends of the galaxies. So learn. And if enough people did just that, says Joseph Campbell, we might see the beginning of the end of the demonization of other peoples around the world. Adding on to that, taking that a little further, is the American poet Maya Angelou. She doesn't fully agree with Campbell, but she believes that travel can help. And she says, perhaps travel cannot prevent bigotry, but by demonstrating that all peoples cry, laugh, eat, worry, and die, travel can introduce us to the idea that if we try and understand each other, we may even become friends. Maya Angelou. So I don't think she's ever walked on the Abraham path in the region we call the Middle East, but I know that much of her life was walking that path in her own way. Our prophet, peace be upon him, was a walker, right? A traveler, a successful man of business that journeyed far and wide, running the caravans for his wife, Khadija. He walked regularly to Jabal Nur. Look at that mountain. It just takes my breath away. This is on the outskirts of Mecca. If you've seen it in person, it's still breathtaking. And he would climb it to the cave of Hira, right? He meditated there, he prayed, he received his first revelation there. But what it took to get there. Dr. Omar Hassan Kasule, who's a Harvard-trained doctor of public health and professor of epidemiology and Islamic medicine at the University of Brunei, has done a lot of research into the Prophet's philosophy of walking. And this is what he reports about that. He says, the Prophet taught the importance of walking as a physical exercise by walking around Medina on foot, even when he could have ridden a horse or donkey. The Prophet taught by example that the best manner of walking is taking quick and big steps. The Prophet's walk is described as a form of jogging, as he was always in a hurry. He never walked lazily. He used to walk around Medina with his wives or his companions, and he also used to walk in the open desert. He climbed mountains. And when you look again at that mountain, that Jabal Nur, you have to remember that not only did he have to get there, but once he had, for example, that first revelation, imagine what it would have taken to get home to Khadijah, where she covered him with her cloak and comforted him and said, no, you haven't lost your mind, darling. You've heard from God. You know, what a strong man. You've got to admire him. Just have to admire him. So walking, he knew as a statesman, as a negotiator, as a leader of his people, he knew the value of walking with your companions and your family and your adversary. When you walk with your adversary, shoulder to shoulder, you're sharing a physical world view. You see the same thing, you're going in the same direction, you have a shared stop at the end, right? You have a shared destination. And that's a way that he, I'm sure, worked through disagreements within his community and between his community and others. And negotiators do this all the time. Most recently, or even recently, we can point to walks that happened at Camp David, walks that happened at Oslo. Walks happen all the time as a tried and true technique for negotiation. Right. The value of walking was not lost on Imam Ali, alayhi salam. In Sermon 87, he preaches on the qualities of the faithful believer. It says, O creatures of Allah, the most beloved of Allah is he whom Allah has given power to act against his passion. He has seen his way and is walking on it. The power to act against his passion. This is what we do during Ramadan, self-discipline. We control ourselves. And I ask you again, can we do it the rest of the year? Walking and travel allow for engagement, direct and in person, and with the same goals. And they bring us walking, the act of walking, the simple act of walking brings us nearer to ourselves, nearer to our companions, and finally, inshallah, nearer to God. And what could be a more apt journey for this month of Ramadan than the journey toward each other and toward God? As we conclude this series today, I'd like us to take a look at the Arba'in, which is very meaningful for our community in particular. It's the world's largest pilgrimage. I didn't know that at first. I always thought the Hajj was the world's largest annual pilgrimage. But if there's a crowd of 4 million at Hajj, it's a crowd of 4 million. If 25 million people are walking the Arba'in, you are walking in welcome company. Now, I had hoped to go in the fall of 2020, but we all know what happened then. Although I've not walked the Arba'in, my colleague, Emily Garthwaite, who is a 2020 and 2021 fellow of the Abraham Path Initiative, has walked the Arba'in, and she's walked it twice. She's an award-winning photographer who had never been even to Southwest Asia ever before and never imagined going to the Middle East. But she got a phone call asking her to work on a film about the Arba'in in 2017. And she said yes. We're going to share with you a 9-minute excerpt from my interview with Emily in May of 2020, in which she describes her experience. And after that, if we have some time left, we'll talk together. Thank you, Hasnain, for rolling this video for us. It's on YouTube. We may need sound. Kenny's, can you hear it? Not if you can hear.
It happens over, it happens from Najaf to Karbala. It's a 70-kilometer walk. And I'd never ever been to the Middle East before, and I'd never heard of Arbaeen before. And it was this extraordinary experience to me. It was my first time ever being in the Middle East, and an incredibly intense, evocative experience. So the first year I walked, and I walked it twice, it was more just coming to terms with my understanding of the Middle East and my upbringing and what the media had fed me from a very, very early age growing up in the UK, to dismantling some of those things I've been taught that simply weren't true.
You know, it strikes me, if I can interrupt you for just a second, having grown up an Iraqi American in New York, I was assaulted by the same kind of negative media. And I had a chance as a teenager to go and visit my one and only time to go to Iraq. And we went, my family, to Karbala, which is where my grandmother is from. That's my dad in the middle of this screen. And I'm the abaya girl. We're all wearing borrowed abayas from the third person from the left on your screen. And my mother's with the tall blonde woman in glasses. And we also had a remarkably surprising experience, intimate and feeling foreign at the same time. So interesting how across generations and from different countries we can be similarly struck by such a new experience.
Yeah.
We have a map of the region we're talking about for our viewers here, so you can see the walk that Emily mentioned from Najaf to Karbala. 70 kilometers, you said, about 50 miles.
Yeah, it's just over 70 kilometers. And there are two different, there's one central route, and it's referred very fondly as the highway of love, which goes to Karbala. But you've also got these rural routes, and that's what I focused on along the Euphrates River. So you can sort of diverge a little bit. And I sort of dedicated that time just to meeting the local communities that are supporting pilgrims as they walk. I met a whole number of families, and at one point it was banned by Saddam Hussein, and it was incredibly dangerous to walk our way. And so one of the families I met, which is the photograph coming up, described to me how they protected pilgrims who were coming in. They would mark their door to say it was safe to hide in their homes. And they all live, they're all date palm farmers, which they've sort of suffered greatly because of war and conflict, and are not, the industry has almost totally disappeared. But these communities are just extraordinary. And I was welcomed into everyone's homes, and I was fed, and we would stay in mokebs, which are these linen-like structures. And this, I would say, this trip changed my life totally. Nothing has ever impacted me in the way that experience did. So I then returned in 2018, this time not making a documentary. I went with my Iranian colleague Farzan, who was fantastic. And I continued in this manner, just following families that were providing housing, shelter, food for pilgrims. And so the man pictured here, he had just returned from Mosul, and he had been gunned down in the stomach by Daesh and was incredibly impacted by that experience. He'd been home for only 3 months, and when he left, the youngest son was only a few months old. And so these are some of the stories you encounter, just immense resilience. And at a time of, intense reflection and communities that are together, but also internationally, people are coming in. 20 up to 25 million people walk Arbaeen. So it's not just locals.
Emily, what is the Arbaeen for? What does Arbaeen mean?
Well, Arbaeen, I've been learning Arabic now, so now it feels even more specific. Arbaeen means 40, the 40th. And it happens over 40 days. On the 10th, it's known as Ashura, which is the day in which Imam Hussein was martyred in the Battle of Karbala. And the commemoration of him happens 40 days later. So the entire period of time over 40 days is known as Muharram. And so it starts with intense mourning, and that continues until the night of Arba'een. And it's extraordinary. I think whether you are Muslim or not, it's almost impossible to not be affected by the intense emotions that everyone is experiencing. And especially as it is the physicality of it, having to walk through the dust and through the date palm forest and along the rivers, and hearing the stories from local communities, and having the food and the tea, and then actually arriving in the city where at most there'll be 12.5 million people. You know, it's completely like the experience is, it's extraordinary. I've walked it twice and I can't wait to do it again.
And you're taken care of by the communities? Nobody is staying in hotels? Nobody is buying
You
meals?
can stay in a hotel if you'd like to, but most people don't. What's extraordinary about Arba'een is, you're fed for free, you're provided shelter. A colleague was telling me how when he walked it, there was a man who had a bag of money who was handing it out to people saying, please just take it. What the hardest thing to do when you walk Arba'een is having to decline anything, because you're offered so much tea, so much food. Everyone wants you to come and stay in their home. And this isn't reflective of being a foreigner. This is the case for anyone who walks. And that's what makes it particularly extraordinary. It's a walk of peace. It always has been and it always will be.
Was it the emotional piece of it? Was it the surprise of how peaceable it was? What was it that changed your life so thoroughly?
I think, growing up in the UK and seeing what's happening at the moment, and Priti Patel has just announced that the borders will be closed, that free movement of people is changing, and the agenda of our government has changed, has gone increasingly closed-minded. Muslims are incredibly vulnerable at the moment, and I'm in a society that is not particularly supportive of diversity. It's probably the least I could say on the matter. But when I went to Iraq, these are some of the most generous, kind people that I have had the opportunity to spend time with. There is so much that we can learn from Iraqis. Resilience is one of them, and understanding and community. Arba'een is particularly important, I think, if you want to help people dismantle their perception of Islam and also conflict in the Middle East. Lots of people still believe that Iraq is a war zone, and that's simply not correct. And people also have a very negative understanding of the Shia Muslim community. And Arba'een is incredibly important, and it's almost unreported in the West. You'll see it more in the Middle East, it'll be reported, but it's incredibly difficult to find out any information. And so, the only reason I knew about Arba'een was because I was invited to walk it. I'd never heard of it before. And, Hajj and Kumbh Mela for Hindus, these are widely known, and they have just as many people, but they don't happen on the same scale every single year. So it's always been incredibly concerning to me why this hasn't been reported as much as it should have been.
Well, another Englishman had heard about Arba'een, or Irishman.
I find her story very inspiring, very authentic, and a genuine appreciation and for what she saw and what she experienced. And she has told that story frequently because it's made such a difference in her life. Emily now actually has moved to Erbil, and she's working on Abraham Path Initiative's Trail Development Project there, along with our colleagues Leon McCarran and Laween Mohammed. Quite an adventuresome young woman. So I'm curious to know, are there any questions that we can engage in this last 10 minutes or so that we have together in this series?
That was incredible. I am wondering if she has a photo journal of those trips, Anissa? Is there something documented on her website?
Yeah, I would say to all of our viewers today, go to emilygarthwaite.com, EMILY, Emily Garthwaite, GARTHWAITE.com.
Okay, we can
And-
definitely link that as well
Okay.
on our website. So yeah, that would be very interesting. Just the few images that were shared were very enthralling, and the one of your family was nice to see also. I love looking at black and white, pictures that have stories behind them that are just fascinating.
It was fun with my mom because she's so tall.
Yeah.
We couldn't find an abaya long enough.
I saw her ankles and sandals showing. Yeah, that was funny.
But we went into the shrine and nobody hushed her or put, shoot her out or anything,
That's great.
welcome. We were welcome.
That's great. I'm so happy to hear, that was the experience. So we do have a couple questions. We'll see if we can get through them before we have to wrap up. During the first lecture, you mentioned that 80,000 people had journeyed on the Abraham Path. How many were from the Southwest Asian region? And how do you encourage people from the region to journey there?
Well, the first part of that question, how do we know where they're from? It is a very difficult undertaking to know where anybody is from. For a while, there were people standing with clickers at some of the trailheads to count the number of people going in. But after a while, that wasn't an accurate way to keep track. And the families who hosted walkers overnight would let us know how many people stayed overnight over a certain period of time. And at first, I would say that the majority of the people who are walking right now, I'm thinking about the path in Palestine, were expat community, people who were looking for something to do on the weekend, some way to get out of Jerusalem, get away from the oppressive environment that can be in Israel, and to go into the countryside, which is just beautiful. I shared some of the images about the countryside with you. And they would go on day walks, and there were different guides and different tour operators offering day walks increasingly. And so that was one of the contingents of people who'd go. And then there were groups that would come from France or England, school groups sometimes. Leeds University sent some kids. And there were a couple of other universities that had delegations of young people go and walk. And then there were some groups from the US too. And some of these groups were mixed. I remember there was a Buddhist nun who was walking with us on one occasion. And I've talked to people from a variety of parts of the world. A lot of people would love to go and walk and haven't had the opportunity. But what we found when ISIS was really screaming loud, bad news from the region, that tourism dropped, international tourism dropped. So what happened instead, and this surprised us, was local people started walking more and more in Palestine, in Jordan, in Turkey. Even in Sinai, we heard that people would come from Cairo to walk on the Sinai Trail. So a culture of walking began to emerge over time. And we'll see where it goes now. I will say that we saw walkers when we were walking in Jordan. It surprised me. We probably saw 3 or 4 or 5 different groups of walkers as we went, and lots of people on buses still, but they're back. People are touring again.
That's good. I know both from the political situation and from COVID, tourism probably dropped. But walking, I can see how the locals took up more walking, because that was one of the safest things that you could do, I guess, during the pandemic, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
But tourism, it went to a dead stop.
Yeah.
People lost their livelihoods. Hotels were closing. Guides and the people we knew went back to work on their family farms. It was a very, very difficult time.
Yeah, I can imagine. We have another question. Can you speak a bit more about the similarities of the habit forming role that both Hajj and Ramadan play?
Yeah, I guess I alluded to that a little bit with my repeated question. And actually I learned that from Fidelma about the neuroscience there. Repetition. She talked about that when she was throwing her stones at the Jamrat. The repetition and the variety of ways you do it. You throw it, you chant Allahu Akbar, you go back 3 times, and you do it 3 times each time you go. So repetition is important. And that's why I asked that question several times. And that's why I find myself, you know how you have a voice in your head that sometimes tells you bad things about yourself, not always, but sometimes, but it's there, it's talking, and you didn't ask it to talk, but it's thinking for you. Well, I'm trying to get that voice in my head to say, you don't have to be angry now. You know you don't have to be angry. You know you can just let it go, Anissa. Let it go. And it's been it's a long process, of course, but I will say my little voice has been a helper to me in that way, in forming a habit. Some of the good habits that I like to maintain from Ramadan in particular. I can look at food and like donuts. I worked in a newsroom during Ramadan for many years, and people would always bring in donuts, and oh, poor Anissa, they'd announce she can't have any. And I'd look at the donuts and I realized, they were pretty, but they're all sugar and fat, and they're not good for me. And I didn't have to eat them, and I knew what they tasted like, and I knew I could have one some other time. So it's that kind of repetition of, reminders of what's good for oneself and what may not be so good for oneself.
Cognitive behavioral therapy.
Exactly. Ramadan as cognitive behavioral therapy. Yeah. There it is, for free.
Okay, so we have one last question. If someone were to start out, so, for example, a young Canadian or American woman, let's say, what would you recommend as a starting path, so to speak? Like what would the first one for someone starting off their foray and walking on the path specifically? Is there a recommendation that you have?
Oh, that's like choosing your favorite child.
Okay. But as far as safety goes, I
would say this, wherever you go, make sure you've got a guide, because it'll just make everything pop. Clarity, the colors, everything will pop for you if you have a local person along the way, and you can ask questions of that person and they'll introduce you to others. So I would say have a guide, and we'll take care of the safety piece too, because your guides will take care of you. There's absolutely no doubt. But what came to mind, if I had to choose a favorite child, is a part of the path I've not been on yet, which is the trail in the Kurdistan region of Iraq, which is brand new for us, and I can't wait to go there.
Which is what the Times article was about, right?
What the Times article was about, yeah.
Okay, one last question. Some people are limited physically or financially and unable to journey far from their homes, unable to walk. What would you suggest for these people who want to experience the benefits of a deep journey at home?
From home. Well, I would say watch our webinars, and I would say attend our live online tours. Now, we're going to be doing more and more of these, but these are tours that happen in real time. It's not someone standing over photographs or maps and telling you what. We have a guide and a camera person, and the guide is facing us, facing the camera, and saying, "Hi, I'm so-and-so, and we're here, and let's walk." And he will do the walking, and the camera person will do the walking, or she, if it's a female guide, will do the walking. And the camera person in this case is a woman who we hire regularly. And we'll take you through, for example, we took people through Bethlehem at Christmas time 2 years in a row. We would like, once there's enough connectivity, to take people into Petra. We would like to be able to take people on a walk in the Palestinian hillsides that I've described, but there are connectivity problems. So we're figuring things out as we go. But our live online tours are another opportunity for people to see the landscapes. Now, inshallah, someday when we have the resources, the virtual reality would be a marvelous experience.
Mhm.
You know, if you had the headpiece on, and we would have done 3D camera work and so on like that. So that's in our pipeline. That's in our future, we hope. But right now, I can recommend this, and there are other places that you can listen in and watch, and even the National Geographic documentaries that they do, and Smithsonian and other places. There's a lot of good work out there that can give you a sense of a place, even if you're sitting at home.
Okay, so just a comment from one of our viewers whose family recently went to Iraq and had comments from, I guess, non-Muslims who asked, is it really safe? So Emily's comment about Iraq and the perception of it being war-torn or the way it is, these perceptions really do need changing, and they were grateful for learning about Emily's observations, and I'm hoping that whoever that viewer is takes the time to go to Emily's website and looks at her account of her experiences there, and maybe shares that with other people, maybe someone that they had this conversation with, or any other non-Muslims who have the same questions. So.
We always get that question, is it safe? Is it safe? And then when I was in Iran, people would say, did you send your children to public school? And I said, well, of course. And they said, well, they shoot children in public schools in your country. So it's, tit for tat. It's not, it's perceptions.
Yeah.
And we need to be addressing perception. Very important.
Yeah.
And there's more to that interview with Emily if you want to go again to our YouTube channel and watch the entirety of that.
Okay, and so the interview with Emily is on
YouTube.
Abraham Path. Okay,
yeah,
that's great. Yeah. All right. Well, unfortunately, I feel like we could carry on for a while here, Anissa, but the time has come that we have to actually say goodbye. Unfortunately, on behalf of the board, it is with gratitude that I extend my appreciation to all of you listening live or to the recording. Again, if you'd like to learn more about the Abraham Path Initiative, please visit abrahampath.org. If you'd like to support the API and Anissa's team's work throughout Southwest Asia, please click donate on the website and see the many ways you can help to build bridges in a world longing for connection. To our speaker, Anissa, we are grateful for your time, for your inspiration, for sharing your stories, and for your work to spread the true essence of Islam. Lastly, events like this are possible only through your generous donations. Please consider a small donation through OIL's website, islamiclearning.org. I wanted to share that we are actually moving to in-person soon, and our annual Muharram program will be live. So there's more information to follow soon on that program. We look forward to seeing everyone again. We've missed all of you. I'm hoping that you've missed us as well. Thank you again, and we look forward to seeing you at our next OIL event. Good night.